Significance is not something you write from passion alone. And it is not something you add because a template requires it. Significance is written after you have already built the logic of the study. You have named the phenomenon, clarified the tension inside it, and articulated the consequence of leaving that tension unresolved. You have located the literature gap that shows what the field still does not know or cannot yet explain. You have also written a purpose statement and research questions that make clear what your study will actually answer. Significance comes right here because now you can finally say, with precision, why those answers matter beyond your immediate setting, and why the missing knowledge identified in the gap has real costs if it remains missing. A strong significance section is an argument for importance, not a repeat of earlier sections. It is not a summary of the research problem, and it is not the literature gap rewritten with different wording. It is not a list of hopes for what the study might change, and it is not a promise that the study will solve the problem. Significance is disciplined language that explains what is at stake and who benefits from the specific knowledge your study will produce. It shows why the study deserves to exist because the world is currently making decisions in the dark, or because people are living through an experience that is being misread, overlooked, or unsupported due to limited understanding. It helps to separate two ideas that students often blend together. The literature gap answers why the study is needed in the scholarly sense by naming what is missing in existing research. Significance answers why that missing knowledge matters in the real-world sense by naming what it costs to continue without it, and who is affected. The gap is about absence in the literature. Significance is about stakes in the world. When those two ideas are separated and both are clear, your chapter 1 stops sounding like opinion and starts sounding like a defensible argument. There are two questions that significance must answer, and if your writing cannot answer both, it usually means the significance section is still too vague. The first question is, what happens if nothing changes? This question forces you to name consequences, not just concerns. It pushes your writing outward from a local problem into system-level stakes. If the tension is left unresolved, what continues to happen in classrooms, programs, institutions, or communities? What patterns persist? What resources continue to be used without impact? Which students, educators, or stakeholders are most affected? What is the long-term cost in outcomes, equity, staffing stability, completion, access, or opportunity? The second question is, who benefits if we understand this better? This question forces you to name beneficiaries and decision points. It requires you to identify which audiences need this knowledge, and what they could do differently once the study clarifies the issue. Significance is not only about harm, it is also about usefulness. It explains who can act differently because your study adds clarity, and what kinds of actions might become more informed. A strong significance argument is usually written in 3 layers. The first layer is stakes and consequences. This is where you name the harm or cost of leaving the problem unresolved, and you show how that cost ripples outward. If the tension involves student disengagement, you connect it to persistence, completion, opportunity, and long-term pathways. If the tension involves teacher attrition, you connect it to staffing stability, instructional continuity, and resource strain. If the tension involves an intervention that is being implemented inconsistently, you connect it to misallocated funding, uneven outcomes, and widened gaps. This layer answers so what in a way that feels real and grounded, not abstract. The second layer is audiences and decision makers. This is where you name who needs this knowledge and why. A strong significance section does not say this will help educators, in a broad way. It identifies which educators and what decisions they are facing. It might be district leaders who must decide how to allocate professional development funds. It might be program directors who must decide how to structure student supports. It might be instructional leaders who must decide what to scale, what to revise, and what to discontinue. It might be policymakers and grant funders determining which initiatives deserve continued investment. Significance becomes persuasive when you connect the missing knowledge to actual decision points, because that is where the importance becomes concrete. The third layer is contribution, and this is where you tightly connect significance back to the literature gap. This layer answers a quiet but critical question. Why this study and why now? It is not enough to say the issue matters. Many issues matter. What makes your study significant is that it produces a specific kind of knowledge the field is currently missing. The contribution is shaped by your methodology and design. A quantitative study contributes by producing measurable evidence where the field currently has only assumption or anecdote. A qualitative study contributes by revealing lived experience and meaning where the field currently has only surface-level indicators or policy-driven interpretations. A mixed-method study contributes by providing both pattern and explanation, measurement and meaning, when the field currently has fragments that do not align. Your significance section should clearly name what the study contributes that previous research has not yet provided, because that is what makes the study worth doing. If you need a draftable way to write this, you can use a sentence structure that tracks the same logic. You begin by naming the unresolved tension and its stakes, then you name the audiences who need the knowledge, then you state what the study contributes because of the gap. A simple frame sounds like this. Although the problem persists in this setting and produces these consequences, the literature has not yet clarified this specific missing knowledge. As a result, these stakeholders continue to make these decisions without adequate evidence or understanding. By producing this specific kind of knowledge, this study can inform these decisions and improve these outcomes or supports. That frame is not meant to make your writing formulaic. It is meant to keep the logic visible and aligned. Significance also needs to be written in aligned, evidence-based language. It should be grounded in the same evidence that supports the research problem and gap. If you claimed in your problem that a pattern is increasing, the significance should not treat that as a casual observation. It should treat it as a documented condition with plausible consequences. Significance does not require a long list of citations, but it should not read like an opinion statement either. It must connect directly to the claims you have already established. It should also use language that matches your design. If your questions are quantitative, the significance should reflect the value of evidence for decisions that require measurement. If your questions are qualitative, the significance should reflect the value of understanding and voice. If your study is mixed methods, the significance should reflect the necessity of integrating both forms of knowledge. To see how this sounds, consider a quantitative significance example. Imagine a study where the gap involves measurable uncertainty, such as whether a meaningful relationship exists, whether an outcome can be predicted, whether groups differ, or whether categories are associated. A quantitative significance paragraph explains that without evidence of a relationship, prediction, statistically significant difference, or association, leaders are forced to make decisions based on assumptions rather than data. It shows that programs are implemented, resources are allocated, or interventions are adopted without clear evidence of what is linked to the outcomes they care about. It identifies specific beneficiaries such as district leadership, program evaluation teams, or policy stakeholders and clarifies what decisions would be better informed if the study produced measurable results. It ties the usefulness back to the exact gap by showing that the study's contribution is the statistical clarity that prior research has not yet provided. Now consider a qualitative significance example. Imagine a study where the gap is meaning-centered, where the field cannot explain what something feels like, how people interpret it, or how they navigate it. A qualitative significance paragraph explains that current decisions, policies, or support structures are being built without understanding the lived experience of the people most affected. It shows that when systems rely only on surface indicators, they often misread what is happening beneath the surface, and that misreading produces misaligned interventions. It identifies beneficiaries such as educators, counselors, administrators, or support teams who need participant voice in order to design supports that are humane, realistic, and responsive. It ties the significance back to the gap by explaining that the study matters because it makes visible what is otherwise unheard, and provides meaning the literature does not yet capture. Finally, consider a mixed method significance example. Mixed method significance is built on the argument that neither numbers alone nor stories alone can resolve the gap. A mixed method significance paragraph explains that complex problems often produce partial knowledge. Data may reveal a pattern but not explain it, or narratives may reveal experience, but not provide measurable evidence strong enough to guide large-scale decisions. It shows that without integration, interventions may be misdirected because leaders either do not understand the pattern deeply enough or do not have evidence strong enough to justify change. It names the beneficiaries as both decision-makers and the populations impacted, emphasizing that integration produces a form of clarity that supports wiser action. It ties this directly to the gap by explaining that the study's contribution is the integrated understanding that neither method could generate alone. Writers often make predictable mistakes in the significance section. One mistake is writing significance as personal passion, where the writing sounds like interest rather than importance. Another is writing significance as a solution statement, promising change the study cannot guarantee. Another is repeating the problem without naming stakes, which makes the section feel redundant instead of persuasive. Another is naming audiences without showing what decisions those audiences make, which keeps the section abstract. Another is claiming broad impact without tying it to the precise gap. The fix is almost always the same. Return to the two significance questions. What happens if nothing changes and who benefits if we understand this better? Then write outward from the tension into systems and audiences, and connect the argument tightly back to the exact missing knowledge named in the gap. Significance is where the study earns its space. It is the bridge from the problem and gap to the world of human consequence and institutional decision-making. When your significance section is strong, the reader can see what is at stake, who needs the findings, and why the specific knowledge your study will produce is worth producing now.